Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This video is about mental health, my personal experiences with my own mental health issues, and I'm sharing this with you guys because, well, this channel's audience mostly consists of people who are in the black pill and looks maxing communities, and I've been in this community for the last few years, and I've observed that many people in this community happen to struggle with mental health issues as well. So some of you might find this content to be relatable to your own experience, and some of you might have gone through these same things and solved your problems. So, and if that's you, share how you did that in the comments below. Share some valuable tips and advice to people who might be having the same problems as me. Also, give me some therapy in the comments. Please, I would greatly appreciate that. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so a little less than 2 weeks ago, in late May, I went on a walk just in the park, and I was in a mood. I was in a pretty bad mood, and I was feeling just really, really pissed. And when I'm in this mood, people are just utter nuisances to me. And I'll show you an example of like how I think with the voice in my head when I'm in that mood. I'll be like, I don't care about you. I don't give a flying fuck about you. You think I care about you? Get on my face, man. And this is not the first time that I have been in this kind of mood. It happened about 5.5 months ago, and I wrote a community post about it. So I'm just going to read that out right now. Sometimes I'm friendly, am chatty, and vibe with people pretty well. Sometimes I hate the fact that other humans exist, and all words that come out of people's mouths are nothing more than nuisances. I flip between mental states of extroversion or sociability and antisociality, and it creates challenges in my social life because the friendship is going to be ruined if someone interacts with me while I'm in the antisocial mood. When I'm like this, I come off as extremely irritable, rude, and selfish, totally unable to get along with others. Right now, I'm in a bit of an angry, non-sociable, and selfish mood. I'm finding it so unbearably painful to do anything that doesn't directly benefit myself. But just a few hours ago, I was in a Discord call with a friend, and I was in a cheerful and extroverted mood, chatting and laughing. I thought that I love to mingle with and provide value to other people. What's wrong with me? So I don't enter this mood very often. It happens quite rarely. Another time that it happened was back in 8th grade. I slapped a kid's folder off of his desk because I was in a bully mood, I guess. And my crush, who was a Stacy, asked me why I did it, or like, what's wrong with you or something. She asked me that, and I just angrily blurted out, because I don't like people. This kind of outburst would even get Chad socially rejected. Like, I just feel this way on occasion, not most of the time. So in summary, I'm usually nice and chill and easygoing, but sometimes I'm a menace. And when stuff like this happens, I have wondered if I had antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, which includes psychopathy and sociopathy. So I wondered, am I a psychopath or a sociopath? But I researched the symptoms online and, well, they just don't fit me at all. I have like zero history of manipulating people and then, things like that. I have many, many examples of emotional empathy and caring about others' feelings in a normal way. One time some guy posted like gore or like violent videos in my Discord server just to troll, I guess. And when I saw that, it literally made me feel like a strong reaction. It distressed me like, oh shit, it was painful to see. And I have felt guilt and remorse for unintentionally harming other people. So I just don't really have the symptoms that are consistent with ASPD. And by the way, I'm not saying that everyone who has ASPD is like the most extreme version of it that's depicted in movies and TV and stuff. Because I just don't want to negatively stereotype all people who have the disorder. There's variation in this group, as with everything. So anyway, my antisocial attitude, it's not persistent nor consistent. It's fleeting. It's quite a rare occurrence, as I said. Other explanations for this are that I am mentally drained or I am mentally preoccupied or, just random fluctuations in mood, I guess. And, sometimes I'm too emotional to be rational at the moment. So, when my mental bandwidth is occupied by other stuff, or I just like have a lack of mental bandwidth because my battery is drained, so to speak, that's when I have a hard time, caring about other people's needs. Like for instance, if I really have to use the bathroom and I'm having a conversation with someone, but I just need to go to the bathroom, that's all that I'm gonna think of. That's my number one priority. So I might not be as considerate, in that situation. And also, there was like a time when I was tired from a long day, and I was really exhausted. So I didn't think that my mom might be hungry, you know. That's not an excuse, but like just an explanation for why I get selfish sometimes. Other times it's when I'm just preoccupied. Like say I'm working on a YouTube video or I'm really focused on coding a project, and let's say my dad calls me over and wants to talk to me. Like my mind is still focused on the project that I'm working on, and that's kind of what I'm going to be thinking about. And I'm also going to have a hard time paying attention to him as he's talking to me because I'm going to be thinking over what he's saying, thinking about the project or thinking about the video I'm making. So, that causes selfish behavior as well because I'm not really like attuned to, meeting the needs of other people. All I really care about in that moment is like, how do I get back to making the video as soon as possible? How do we end this conversation? Again, it's not an excuse. It's something I need to work on. But, other times, like when I went on that walk and I was in that mood, like sometimes I just feel irritable, like for no reason. It's just random. All right, so that's the antisocial, irritable mood. But even when I'm not in that mood, there is a concerning amount of selfishness in my personality. And this is like, these are like thoughts that I've had throughout my life. Like, as early as middle school, I've thought, I don't want to do morally better than others. It's like I feel a desire to match the same level of immorality that I observe in other people's actions. So if someone breaks a rule, I go like, oh, it's not fair. He gets to do that. I want to break the same rule. That guy got into a fight. I want to get into a fight too. When I see other people having a higher goodness received to goodness given ratio, I feel envious and I want to match that. Like this is pretty concerning to me because it's just like a very selfish desire to get the most bang for my buck out of life. The most personal gain with the least contribution. Okay, so let's move on to the next section. And this one is about how I have a very small social battery. It drains very fast and I'm socially selfish. And here are the consequences of my social selfishness on my social life. So the key point here is that I have a high desire to be interacted with, but a low motivation to actually connect with people. And I do want to connect with people. I'm just not motivated to. So here are some of the bad habits I have. Spending lots of time reading Reddit. And I like to read Reddit because I like to read about other people's personal experiences. I like to hear things being said, from a personal point of view. So it's much more enjoyable for me to read Reddit than to read, let's say, Wikipedia or read a book or read a news article. I really prefer to be reading, things that people post in a personal way. So, I'm kind of lazy socially. I kind of keep to myself. I don't really put myself out there and approach people, but I spend so much time on the internet lurking, consuming other people's conversations. I like to sort of watch other people socialize in the form of watching Jubilee videos where people with different perspectives have discussions with one another. And it's very easy. It's a form of instant gratification. And you'll see this as a recurring theme throughout this video. I tend to go for instant gratification rather than doing the hard things that lead to better outcomes in the future. So another way that I go for instant gratification when it comes to socializing is that I much less frequently than average join other people's conversations and engage with other people's posts. I'm much more in the habit of writing a new post and just reaping the rewards by getting a bunch of likes and getting a bunch of responses. And this applies not only to Reddit, where I make lots of posts, but I don't reply to other people's posts, and YouTube, where I post a lot of community posts because that's a convenient way for me to get a lot of responses, a lot of comments, a lot of social stimulation without much effort. And in Discord as well, this is something that I do all the time, post and dip. I go into a server, I go to a text channel where people are not already having a conversation, and I just post something and then I dip. I just leave the server because I'm not intending to have a conversation right now in real time. And I just come back later and then just read the responses that they gave me. My social battery is very, very small. So long conversations are just quite painful to me. I tend to quickly lose interest in what other people have to say. If a conversation takes too long, I just mentally disengage and wish to end the conversation as quickly as possible so I can leave and do anything else. I usually feel this way when I'm talking to my parents because I'm sort of required to listen to them, and the conversations are usually quite serious. It's not very stimulating either, we're not talking about fun things. These are the factors that make it painful for me to have a long conversation with my parents. And when they do, eventually I will just give very dry responses. I'll just say okay, yes, just to try to get them to run out of things to say so they can finish so that I will be free to leave. And I also try to capture pauses in their speech as opportunities for me to leave. And I get irritated when the move fails and they continue speaking. I'm like, why are you still talking to me in my head? I don't say that out loud because I try to be polite, right? But in my head, I'm like, am I free to leave? Why are you still yapping? When will we be done? By the way, something else that happens when I have to listen to these long conversations, sometimes some random funny thoughts will just start popping up in my head, and it's difficult for me to stop myself from laughing. There have been a few times when I've been listening to my mom, and I really was listening, and I just randomly laughed. And my mom thought that I wasn't listening, or, thought that I thought what she said was funny, and it's like an inappropriate reaction. But I was like, bro, believe me, I assure you that that's irrelevant. I was listening, just ignore the laughing. Please continue. Look, man, if you talk to me for too long and bore me to death, my mind's gonna wander. And if I fail to keep my composure, social consequences await. When I was in 8th grade, I was sitting in the principal's office with my mom one day. I was one step away from getting put into this disciplinary purgatory, and the principal was explaining some very serious things to me. Oh, but these funny thoughts just kept popping up in my head. I was trying so hard not to laugh, bro. I was pinching myself, I was pinching my skin, and I was holding my facial muscles tight to prevent myself from laughing. And it's I eventually started making these weird faces, doing these weird things with my mouth to just stop the laughter from coming on. And my mom was looking at me saying don't make weird faces. It's bro, I did what I had to do, and I didn't laugh in the whole meeting. And that's great, because if I did, then the principal might think that I'm a sociopath or a psychopath, and that I actually should be sent to the alternative school if I think that what I did was funny. In addition to having a short social battery that drains quickly, I also have just social selfishness. So I tend to only be motivated to use people for attention, entertainment, or as a means to get access to things like parties and alcohol. And I know this because I get lazy and lose motivation to socialize with people once I find out that I can't get these things from them. Here's a community post that I made about this problem 9 months ago, and I'll read it out now. At a school club meeting, I met a girl who's about a 3 out of 10 facially. She said she's sort of lonely and isolated and wants to have someone to talk to. It could be me, right? I'm not attracted to her, but I could try to build a friendship. I'm lonely, so it benefit both of us. What's the problem? I'm too damn selfish. I had no desire to socialize with her because my main motive for socializing is to try to gain access to the lifestyle of young, attractive college students. Going out, fraternities and sororities, drinking, partying, hooking up, spring break trips, etc. When I socialize, I always have this as an ulterior motive. And the truth is, even hurts me to admit it, I'm just desperate to use people for hedonism. I'm not genuinely seeking to create relationships. I really want to believe that I'm searching for friendship, and I often portray myself online as a lonely person who just wants friends. But the hard truth is more sinister. Without a chance of getting invited to parties or getting access to hedonistic youth experiences, I have little incentive to even pretend to care about you. I'm too selfish for my own good. A 3 out of 10 guy passes on an opportunity to be friends with a 3 out of 10 girl because the girl can't get the 3 out of 10 guy into house parties with tipsy 8 out of 10 sorority chicks? This guy's stupid. It's giga hypocritical. In my video, Confessions of a Low-Value Loner, I claimed that I would pay it forward by helping lonely people. I say I'm a guy who wants to help all sub-5s, a guy who always roots for the underdogs. I say I'd never wish loneliness and undesirability onto my worst enemy. But I say one thing, but do another. I chose to not help a lonely sub-5 person because she was sub-5.
It's disgraceful. Really.
So, I pretty much ain't got no one to blame but my own damn self for my loneliness and how I have no friends. And here's another example. This is a very recent example. There's a certain person online who has been talking to me, and I'm always unmotivated to respond to him because I just find him too boring. So I procrastinate on responding to him, for like a few days, hours, days, and when I finally get to doing it, I just reply to him with very short responses like, oh, that sucks, man. And then I just immediately leave. And I expect him to also take a long time to reply, so that I can feel unpressured to respond for at least the next couple of hours or days. But lo and behold, he responds right away. Fuck, I ain't dealing with that. I'm gonna reply in a few days just to slow you down. Like, I don't even know why you think I'm online. I'm trying to pretend that I'm offline. Like, can you see through the bullshit? Why are you able to see through the bullshit? But every time I ignored him or gave him a really dry, low-effort response, I felt remorseful. Like he told me how upset he felt about how I've been treating him, and that makes me feel bad, but I won't make amends to him because I'm just not willing to. I can put myself in his shoes and understand how I make him feel. I can think back to the memories when I got rejected, when I've been ignored by other people, how painful that feels. But at the end of the day, I choose to be selfish.
It's disgraceful.
Everything that I've talked about, all of my social struggles I've talked about in this section of the video ties back to this key point, that I'm just not motivated to socialize with people unless it gives me instant gratification dopamine. And this type of social greed, this social selfishness, leads to an utter failure to build long-term relationships. And you know what? It's only fair. If I keep treating people this way, having no friends is exactly what I deserve. Now let's move on to the next section, and this will be about my struggles with motivation and productivity. While I haven't ever been diagnosed with ADHD, I strongly suspect that I have the condition. And, a lot of the traits, the symptoms of ADHD, I definitely have them, sometimes to a severe degree. So we'll start with restlessness, the fidgeting, the walking around. Sometimes I just can't really sit still for a long period of time. I just randomly get up and I'm like, the fuck am I doing? What am I doing, man? Why'd you get up? Why'd you get up, bro? Sit back down, man. I also struggle to stand still when I'm being talked to for a long time by my mom. I'm just itching to leave. I just can't wait to get the conversation over with. And I'm swaying back and forth, moving around, not standing still. And when I'm doing tasks like brushing my teeth or getting ready to put on socks, I'll just be walking around my room, just randomly just pacing around, walking around all the time, thinking and daydreaming. And, when I sit, I tend to tap my foot, shake my leg a lot of fidgeting. So here is, one of the many paradoxes of my ADHD traits, which is that I'm always on the go, yet I'm not going anywhere in life. Another thing is insomnia. I just have a hard time falling asleep because I just feel like it's really hard to shut my brain off, because I always want to be keeping myself stimulated by watching YouTube, browsing forums. I don't want to just lie there and wait until I fall asleep. It's just not enough stimulation. Like, I always got to be doing shit. Yeah, another problem I have is elaborate planning, but no execution. So this means that every day I have a list of tasks. I have a to-do list. I have a calendar. I plan out how I want to spend my day and the things that I need to get done every day. I plan this out, and yet at the end of the day, nothing has been done. Elaborate planning, but no execution. And every day I tell myself that tomorrow I will do it differently. And I mean it with my full intention, and yet I do not do it. So I've been stagnant for the last several years. And I'm always busy, but rarely productive. So I get annoyed when people interrupt my focus, like, oh, I don't want to talk to you right now. I'm focused on doing this thing on my computer. But what am I doing? I'm watching an irrelevant YouTube video that is pretty much a waste of time. Like, it is so important to me that you don't interrupt my focus when I'm wasting time. I get very irritated if someone prevents me from getting my fix of online stimulation. And the funny thing is that usually my attention span is too short to actually watch the video all the way through. Yeah, another paradox is that I'm often lazing around, but I'm never truly relaxed. And this ties back to my social struggles as well. I'm always thinking, yet I don't think before I speak. And I'm easily bothered by uncleanliness, yet I don't consistently maintain my hygiene. This shit makes no sense, man. So because I'm so unmotivated, because my motivation is such a rare occurrence, when it does come, I feel the need to take full advantage of it as I treat it as a scarce resource. I insist on completing a long task all in one sitting, because I know that if I stop, I might not be motivated enough to start it again the next day. Who knows when I'm gonna get motivated again? I need to use it while I still can. And my laziness problems are just beyond normal laziness. Like, sometimes I'm too lazy to take a nap. Bro, too lazy to take a nap. How does that make any sense, man? I feel too lazy, not motivated enough to take medication. Literally last night, I ran out of pills in one pill bottle, but I had another one in my backpack, and I had to, take that out of the backpack to take my meds at night. But I was too lazy to unzip the bag, so I just went to sleep without taking the meds, and then I woke up and I still didn't feel like unzipping the bag, so I was still procrastinating after a full night of sleep on just swallowing a pill. Granted, I've been depressed lately, so that makes it harder, but still. I also procrastinate on going to the bathroom. And this is usually an indirect thing, because here's an example of how that might go down. I thought of some ideas that I need to write down in order to not forget them, but I don't feel like writing them down right now. So I'll browse Reddit for a few minutes and then write it down. I also need to go to the bathroom. I need to use the toilet. But if I do that before I write down my ideas, I might forget some of the ideas. So I must write down the ideas before I go to the bathroom. And I'm procrastinating on writing the ideas down, thus also procrastinating on going to the bathroom. Another ADHD trait I have is novelty seeking. An example of this is that I need to move to a different apartment each year in university because living in one place with the same people for 4 years is just too boring. I want to be in a different location every year. But moving is just insanely painful. I hate packing my stuff. It's so fucking tedious. Oh yeah, well, I'm also unmotivated to do something once I've found out that it works. So this is kind of like, it doesn't really make sense rationally, because it's like, once you find out that something works, you should keep doing it, right? But for me, once I find out that something works, I know exactly what to expect, So then I'm no longer curious to see whether or not it works. So I actually lose motivation to keep doing it. And guess what? A major reason that I got motivated enough to start making this video is because of novelty seeking. It's because I'm trying out a new editing style with the subsections and progress bar at the top of the screen. I felt it might add a little bit of a professional touch to the gameplay footage that by itself would be perceived as low effort and low quality. And, well, if you've been following this channel for any significant period of time, like all of the subscribers know that I have a major issue with uploading consistently. I'm just not motivated to make YouTube videos. So I have a massive problem with time management as well, and everything just takes so much longer for me than it should. And I'm always finding myself in awe at other people's ability to do so much stuff, to juggle all of these different things in life. Like the people I've met, they can have a full-time job and they have a relationship and they're taking 5 classes in university. And on top of that, they also have the time to watch Netflix and anime and play games such that they have enough of that to talk about when they have conversations about TV shows and stuff. I'm like, dude, if you're doing all that, how do you still have time to even watch shows? Like, dude, how does everyone have all this time? I don't understand, man. Like, people are they're superhumans to me. Like in this community, in this subculture, people say the word subhuman a lot, but how I perceive other people is that they're superhuman. So look, in theory, a 30-minute YouTube video on the types of videos I make, it should take, about 2 hours roughly to plan, write an outline, revise the outline, and, gather and organize sources and video clips I want to cite. And this is not all done in one sitting of 2 hours because I add to the outline as I come up with the ideas in my day-to-day life and as I encounter content online that happens to be relevant to my video topics. But I would estimate that in total it takes no more than 2 hours to write the outline and get all these materials ready. So to make PowerPoint slides for a 30-minute video maybe would take 3 to 4 hours. To record a voiceover, editing as I go, it might take about 3 to 4 hours at the max. Like these are like very high estimates. It should take no more than 3 to 4 hours. And it should take no more than 3 to 4 hours to edit in a video editor for the final result. And making a short between 1 and 2 minutes shouldn't take more than 1 to 2 hours. So in theory, I should be able to do all my YouTube stuff and, it should be totally manageable to do at a very comfortable pace of 1 long-form video every 2 weeks and 1 short-form video each week. So that totals out to only about 6.5 to 9 hours of YouTube work per week, or just over 1 hour a day. It's really not that much. Like, in theory, I should be able to manage it just fine, and yet I don't do it. I don't do it because I have a very big problem with getting motivated and staying consistent to achieve goals. But another thing is that, think about 1 hour a day, right? It should not really affect the rest of my day. Because I think, in theory, you have the other, 15 hours that you're awake. You can just slot in 1 hour and then just spend the rest of the day exactly as you otherwise would, right? But what happens is that when I need to get one thing done that should take about, let's say I want to make a YouTube short and it takes 1 to 2 hours. The entire day, my mindset around the whole day is it has to be dedicated to just getting this one thing done. And 5 hours of this day are just procrastinating to prepare to get to start to do the thing. And after I finish the task, 3 hours of lazing around, relaxing, and recharging because, that's all the motivation I had for today. Somehow, even with the most mundane, basic, everyday tasks, they just take longer than they should. And it's probably because I'm always unfocused and procrastinating on the smallest things. Sometimes I don't even realize that I'm doing that. And I collected data on this back when I was in 7th grade, when I was 12 years old. I wondered why it takes so damn long for me to do my homework, and other kids seem to have so much more time than me. They have so much more free time to play games and hang out with friends. So, I measured one day. I just sat down and I just used a stopwatch on my phone and measured, how much of the time that I am doing homework, quote unquote, I'm actually working on the homework itself. So that came out to about 2 hours in a 2-hour session of doing homework. I only did 30 minutes of work, and 90 minutes of it were wasted doing other random bullshit. Yeah, so no fucking wonder. I mean, like, I have a friend who is a YouTuber, an online friend, not an IRL friend. And, he told me that, well, he's making a scene in Blender, and he told me that it only took him an hour and a half. And I'm like, bro, I've been using Blender for years. And that scene that took you an hour and a half, that would take me the whole day. That would take me 6 to 8 hours. How the hell are you so damn fast, bro? I mean, I don't know, man. This is probably why. It's probably because I'm not even doing the work most of the time. So, like I said, I had this problem back when I was 12 years old. And, I keep thinking that it's about time, that I turn things around, and I think, okay, this year things are going to be different. I'm going to turn things around. So 8.5 months ago, at the start of my junior year of college, I wrote this community post, and I said, it says, "It's become extremely apparent that my brain is utterly destroyed. I can't concentrate for shit. I fidget a ton. I have brain fog, and I'm glued to YouTube, Discord, and web browsing. I don't read books anymore. Reading is too boring for my brain to tolerate. I crave stimulation all the time. I watch content on YouTube that's not useful to me. I feel the need to constantly consume entertainment. And I often can't even consume the entertainment properly. A few minutes in, I get bored, and it's off to the next video. 30 tabs open in Chrome. A dialog box that says, 'Your computer has run out of application memory' is a familiar sight, not only because of the tabs, but also because I have very little free space left on my drive for swap memory, because I compulsively screenshot everything. 7 to 8 hours of daily screen time on laptop, and 5 to 6 hours of daily screen time on phone, for total daily screen time of 12 to 14 hours. I can't brush and floss my teeth consistently. My sleep schedule's fucked up. I haven't even started a single assignment, and I'm a month into the college semester. So that was 8.5 months ago, and to this day, I still have the exact same problems to the exact same severity that I have had in high school and even years before. It's literally not improved. And I keep thinking that I'm gonna improve, but I don't. Well, actually, scratch that. There are other areas in which I have improved, though these changes are expected to happen with growing up. Here are things that I don't do anymore. So I have a history of childhood disciplinary misbehavior, weirdness, obnoxiousness, and extreme attention-seeking behavior. Just always acting up, doing dumb shit, ending up in the principal's office, detention, suspension, always trying to jester max and be a class clown to make my schoolmates laugh. I used to do those and I don't do them anymore. But that's what they remember me for. So the other day, I actually ran into a girl that I went to high school with when I was just outside, just taking a walk in the park, ran into her. And, she said that the other day she was with her friend who I also went to high school with. And, but I went to elementary school with the girl that I ran into. I did not go to the same elementary school as her friend. So this girl and her friend, they were looking at their elementary school yearbooks. And so her friend was surprised to learn that I went to the same elementary school as the girl I ran into. It's a bit wordy. I hope that makes sense. But here's what her friend said about me. Her friend said, "Oh my God, that guy was so crazy." So that's how I have been remembered, because that's how I used to behave. So the girl I ran into, she also asked me, what you been up to? And this ties back to the fact that I'm always busy, but rarely productive. I gave a very vague answer because the truth is, I haven't been doing much of anything. Well, that pretty much wraps up this section, but I plan on releasing a video about my childhood experiences, some stories of just being like fucking crazy, and it's going to be called Mischief Maxed and Empathy Mind, Tales from a Not So Neurotypical Childhood. I already made the thumbnail for the video. But even though I have the symptoms of ADHD and have had them for a long time, and find ADHD videos to be some of the most relatable videos I've ever watched, I still wonder if I'm malingering. I wonder if I'm faking it. Like maybe I'm just lying to myself to victim mindset max and get people to pity me. Oh, woe is me, I can't function. Please prescribe me the speed. Why do I think so? Well, remember when I said I wasn't motivated enough to unzip my bag to take out a pill bottle? Well, that morning, I decided to just use my free will to just choose to do it. And I did it. So it looks like I actually do have the ability to just do it. I voluntarily chose not to use and train this ability. I'm just gonna tack on this short part at the end of this section. I have some OCD traits, but they're mild, so if it's anything, it's subclinical for sure. I do this ritual from time to time where even though I'm not religious, I pray to God and ask him to not ever let me get the life-threatening health conditions that I don't want to get. Like, never let me get a stroke, never let me get an aneurysm, never let me get a hemorrhage, never let me get a parasite, never let me get a blood clot in my blood vessels. Yeah, that's just something that I do a few times a day, I guess, listing all the health conditions in my mind that I need to not get. And I'm kind of OCD with handwriting, and that slowed me down in school so much. Like, I just need to make sure that, like, every time I write a O, it has to, like, meet at the join point and not, like, have like a mark that goes off of the circle. Like, it's not that I need my handwriting to be perfectly neat. It's just that it needs to like be written in a specific way to look a certain way. Like when I write a 1, I don't just write a line. It has to be like how the number 1 looks in a computer font. So those are pretty much all my OCD traits. Moving on. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about my struggles with depression, apathy, and my extremely high time preference. I feel apathetic about the future, and I have thoughts about just randomly throwing my life away, just for fun, because I just don't care. So one example of this is that I don't really have a desire to live past, let's say, 30 years old, because I just don't think life has enough novelty to offer me to justify existing for that long. You know, and I thought this way ever since I was a teenager. I just didn't intend to live past, you know, maybe 30, 35, 40, and I considered committing suicide at like 35 as an option. I just didn't see the point in living a long life. And these suicidal thoughts are very different in nature from suicidal thoughts that come from sadness or depression. I tend to have suicidal thoughts just because I'm too bored, or I expect to be bored in the future. I'm like, why keep playing the game if it's not fun? Just return the game to the store. And when I was a teenager, I hid this mindset from my parents. When my parents talked to me, I would always pretend that I cared about my health, that I cared about longevity, that I wanted to live a long life, because I didn't want them to be even more disappointed in me than they already were. I didn't want to reveal to them the truth about my personality, which is that I just don't give a shit. Recently, my dad told me that I will die young and poor if I don't change my ways. But hearing this didn't really hurt my feelings, because I never valued a long life in the first place. My short-termness, this short-term centricness of my brain makes me feel this inner restlessness of just needing the results now and being very irritated if it has to take a long time for me to achieve a goal. Like with YouTube, with starting a business, moving up in my career and making money, I just get so annoyed at the fact that it takes too long. It's just like 5 years in the future. It's just too long, too long. I don't want to put up with this shit. I need it now. And I don't trust myself to stay consistent. So I am concerned that even if I manage to develop good habits and stay disciplined for some length of time, let's say for a few months, I just worry that at any moment I might just quit and fall off and then I'm back at square one. There is no momentum. I'm the type to just randomly give up even if things are going good. So that makes me even less motivated because I think, well, what's the point of starting a business if I'm eventually just gonna suddenly stop caring and throw it away and let the business rot? The issue is a lack of care about the future. And there's an important distinction between truly caring about something and merely believing that it is important. See, as early as my early teen years, you could say that I already had the right values. I believed that it was important to do well in school, to take care of my health, to be disciplined, to avoid vices like drugs, to persist towards long-term goals. That's what I believed. Those were the values that I believed in, but just believing that, it's not the same as caring. And there are many examples of this that apply to a lot of people in general, not just myself. There are lots of people that believe that homelessness or hunger are big problems in society. And yet they do not do very much, like donating and volunteering, to help solve these problems. Many people believe that declining birth rates are an important issue, yet they do not want to have children themselves. Many teenagers in high school believe that vaping is bad for them, yet they do it anyway because they do not care enough about the negative consequences. See, I look back at my thought process and my mindset back when I was in high school, and I look back at my actions at the time, and I realized that I never truly cared for the future. I never truly cared about going to a top university. I merely believed that it is important, but that isn't enough. Moving on, some of the thoughts I have about throwing my life away just for fun are pretty concerning to me because they indicate poor psychological health. Because I have these intrusive thoughts about engaging in violence, but I'm not a violent or mean-spirited person. So let me explain. It's that I don't ever have violent thoughts about hurting animals, hurting children, or being a serial killer and murdering someone who is sleeping, nothing like that. But I do have violent thoughts about engaging in mutual combat with another consenting adult who is also down for the same amount of violence as I am. You know, like a bar fight or a street fight. And I absolutely do not act on these urges because, well, I'm not very big and strong. I just don't have a chance of actually winning a fight. I'm not a martial artist. I just don't have what it takes, but I keep fantasizing about this because I guess I just see it as a life of freedom and a life of action and excitingness and risk and danger. There's just something appealing about living a life full of conflict. Sometimes I feel like, man, fuck being a programmer. Why can't I just be a gangster? And it's a very irrational form of envy because people who, people who are in gangs obviously have objectively worse quality of life. It is definitely not fun to get shot and bleed out on the street and no one's there to help you. It's just not worth it. And I'm also really not the violent type. I just am not the type to get a kick out of hurting people. I have never hurt animals on purpose, and I feel really sad when I see animals get hurt or killed. And, I even go to lengths to prevent caterpillars from being stepped on, so if I might be on my college campus and then I see a caterpillar on the ground and there's a bunch of students walking on the walkway, I just suck up the cost of looking really weird, bending over and picking up the caterpillar. Because look, I have to save the caterpillar's life. My dad told me when I was a kid that I have a kind heart. But ever since I was a kid, I kept on feeling this weird sort of envy towards people who are more violent than me. It's like, oh, I wish I was that type of kid who would get into fights. I guess it's just because I saw that as exciting, I just want a day off from having to exercise self-control and always engage in monotonous tasks like studying and stuff. I just want to enjoy a moment when I can act completely uninhibited and not worry about the consequences. You know, it's like, no fair, they get to let loose, whereas I have to exercise restraint and keep my composure all the time. Like, why can't I have my chance to just go ape shit, go all out? I find peace and stability too boring, and I just have this itch to scratch, and I just want to see drama. I want to see shit go down. So one time when I was a teenager, when I was about like maybe 14, 15 years old, well, for background information, my parents don't love each other anymore. And they used to argue, but they don't anymore. Now they just don't communicate with each other. And when I was about 14 and 15, I was just pissed off that it had to be this kind of bad marriage. I thought like, oh, why couldn't it be something like domestic violence? That would be like, that would be fun to watch. There would be more shit to do. And I could be a hero. I could be the one to stop and break up the fight, you know? And it's a wrong thing to want, right? I love my parents. I love my family. Like, doesn't it just feel a bit despicable that you would want for the family relations to be even worse just because it's more entertaining, like a movie? You know, like, the fact that there is no violence in my life, the fact that I live in a safe neighborhood that does not have crime, that stable, secure life is an objectively good thing and something that I ought to be grateful for, and I am grateful for it, but I'm not satisfied. Furthermore, I've fantasized about taking a trip to a hypothetical island where there are no laws. Everyone who visits this island has to sign a contract to consent to the risks that they're getting themselves into. And I just want to visit this island to play Battle Royale with other people who consented to this hostile game. So I can just go apeshit and, you know, if I don't care about my life anymore, I can at least end my life with spectacle. Like, why would I want to die of old age if I can instead die in an MMA fight or a gunfight? You know, like, sometimes I just feel like I have nothing to live for in the civilized world, and I wish to live my final moments acting like an animal that has no frontal cortex. Alright, so lately I've been feeling really depressed, really tired, exhausted, no motivation. But just last month, when I was living away from my parents in college, I felt pretty motivated. I felt like I had a zest for life, and I wanted to improve my life. But as soon as I came home for the summer, I immediately plunged into a depressive slump. And this is probably part of the cannabis withdrawal because I was using copious amounts of weed during the school year. And at the end of the school year, I decided that I'm going to quit at least for the summer. And the worst days of withdrawal, of like the nausea, insomnia, all of those symptoms are over. Like, the peak of the withdrawal has already passed, which is great. But I still feel like shit mentally, and I suppose that there's still a pretty long way to go until my brain readjusts back to its original baseline. Like, and I'm like, bro, 90 days is so long, man. It's just so long. I actually think about drugs all the time, including ones that I've never taken, which is basically every drug besides weed. It's like, the last few nights, I've just been craving the harder stuff because I just want something, anything to make me feel good, you know? And I've been watching and reading content on the internet about drugs all the time. I read the experiences of former addicts, the suffering that they had to endure, the horrors of being trapped in a cycle of addiction. Yet, I still can't shake the desire to do drugs. It's like I almost don't give a fuck if I get addicted. I just want something now to make me feel something. I'm gonna read out a community post that I made back in December of 2024. I wrote, "I'm gonna improve!" Seriously, I decided to embark on a self-improvement journey and share it with you guys to inspire you to improve your lives too. Let's ascend together. I fucking love y'all in the Black Pill community. I'll still make videos on looks and inceldom, but this channel will transition into more of a growth mindset vibe and have less of a doomer vibe. I don't know how long my good mood will last. I hope I'll stick to this and not fall back into crippling depression. Okay, well, I have fallen back into crippling depression at the beginning of the summer. But you know, I gotta use the rational part of my brain to keep the emotional part of my brain in check, you know? And I tell myself that, okay, if your mood can go down, then it can also go back up. So just give it time and your brain's gonna heal and you're gonna feel better. You just gotta be patient, which is like the thing that I have the least of is patience. Cause how I'm feeling right now is that I just can't fucking wait for the summer to be over. I can't wait to go back to school so I can finally get high again. That's like the light at the end of the tunnel for me right now. The next section is taking an unexpected turn for a lot of you guys watching, and it's about gender dysphoria. I'm trans, and I've had gender dysphoria for as long as I can remember. I really want to be a woman. When I was a little kid, I wish that I had been born a girl. Always wanted to be a girl and be perceived and treated by others as one of the girls. But unfortunately, I didn't have the privilege of transitioning young, so, I had to watch my body masculinize against my will, and at this point, my voice is just too masculine, and, it's doing a feminine voice is really, really hard. I just can't get it to sound realistic. My shoulders are too broad, my hips are too narrow, my rib cage is too big. I have all of these like dysphorias about my body, about all of my masculine features. And also with my personality and my behavior, because there are some trans women who were naturally feminine basically from the time that they could talk, and that definitely wasn't me. When I came out, no one saw it coming. They were surprised because I never showed any signs when I was a kid. I pretty much kept it all to myself, and the way that I behaved outwardly, it was just like a regular dude. I wasn't naturally feminine. I didn't even get along with women in a platonic way, ever. It was a lot easier for me to get along with males than for me to, make friends with girls. So the behavioral aspect, like quote unquote, acting like a woman, so to speak, it just doesn't really come natural to me. So I envy the way that other women behave. I envy their personalities. I wish that my personality were more like theirs. I also envy everything about the lives of the women that I see. I'm so pissed that I'm missing out on everything that I've always wanted. I wish that I could have gone to high school prom as a girl, wearing a dress. I wish that I could have experienced, all the female side of the gender-specific experiences of youth. And this is also kind of a black pill because, my genetics just aren't that good. Even if I passed as a woman, which I don't, even if I passed, my face is just, I just don't have the looks. So, I always compare myself to women on social media, and I try not to go on social media too often because it just fucks with my mental health, because I just get so jealous of everything that I see women posting, how pretty and feminine they are. I'm never going to look like them. It's just over. I just don't have the genetics. A lot of that stuff just isn't in the cards for me. Like I said, I don't pass, and it's going to take a while for me to save up enough money to get facial feminization surgery, bottom surgery, all the surgeries that I want to get in order to be who I want to be. But by that time, I'll be so old that I'll have missed out on youth anyway. All the dreams that don't come true. It is what it is. But I do have a lot of things in transition that I am very happy about. So I've been on hormones for a year. I've been taking estrogen, and my body changed in all the ways that I've always wanted it to. So that's really great. I like my new body, and it makes me very happy. And that's awesome, but that's the lowest effort part of transition. It's a very passive thing. There are other things in transition that require effort, like voice training and putting on makeup. I'm not saying all trans women have to do this, but these are things that I want to do. And my biggest problem is that I don't have enough motivation to do the things that I want to do. I'm upset about not passing, and yet I don't wear makeup because it's too much work. It's just too hard, too much effort. I complain about not passing, but I don't voice train, and I don't attempt to use my feminine voice for more than a few seconds or minutes because it's just too much effort. Changing my habits takes too long. Speaking of habits, I have a mental bad habit of narcissistic daydreaming / mental masturbation. So I frequently daydream about myself making some smart, witty-ass remark in front of a lot of people. And I imagine myself doing this in my male voice. Basically, like, I imagine myself speaking as if I'm always smirking, if that makes sense. And I imagine myself talking like the dialogue in Aaron Sorkin movies.
But at the moment, I could buy Mount Auburn Street, take the Phoenix Club, and turn it into my ping pong room.
This kind of unrealistic snappiness and cleverness, like CinemaSins videos. And I can't talk like this in real life, but I wish I could. Here are some examples of things I've daydreamed about. So I imagined talking about things like being a man, being a woman, and transitioning in an extremely nonchalant way in front of an audience. And I casually mention things that are actually huge struggles for me, but I act as if I don't care. So I imagine myself speaking in front of an audience, saying something like, by the way, I know I'm never going to pass, but I digress, just glossing over something that actually bothers me. And I fantasized about receiving validation for my insecurities. So I've daydreamed about me confidently saying in front of a bunch of people that I know I don't pass, and the people react with surprise and tell me that I actually pass. Like, I'm just stroking my ego at this point. I fantasized about hanging out with a group, socializing, talking confident, charismatic, hyper-masculine, but then accidentally stubbing my toe or something and emoting involuntarily in a female typical way, like, ow! This kind of reaction doesn't really happen in real life, except when I'm high on weed. But I fantasized about this thing happening because I want the people around me to, like, find out that I'm truly a woman on the inside. That's what I want them to think of me. I don't want them to see me as a male crossdresser. I want them to see me as this jaded trans woman who's been dealt a bad genetic hand and has given up on voice training, but deep down is a woman, indicated by that kind of natural reaction slipping out. I've also imagined walking into class on the first day and saying, "Ah shit, here we go again," like CJ in GTA San Andreas, to make the class laugh, like I'm projecting myself as a funny, charismatic, not overly serious person who's kind of a class main character, like just imagining myself as a main character, you know. I've imagined myself going to a convention full of conservatives as a passing trans woman, and the speaker says, "Should trans women compete in women's sports?" And I take the mic and I answer, "No," in a deep masculine voice, and the crowd cheers. And I've daydreamed about acting like a video game main character. I imagine coming across a group of guys physically attacking another trans woman, and I show up and take down the assailants and save the trans woman who was attacked. And the dialogue in this fantasy is like cringe. It's like movie video game lines like, "Hey, leave her alone." "Oh, another You think you're hot shit, don't you? Big mistake. We'll see about that." You know, like not exact quotes, but like this is what I imagine it's along the lines of this kind of dialogue style. And it's unrealistic, and I obviously know I can't fight in real life. Real life is not a video game where the player somehow survives against 10 enemies that are twice the player's size. Like, why do I keep imagining up these narcissistic-ass fantasies about myself being a hero or acting like a movie character or delivering some snarky line, impressing other people? Is it just narcissism or insecurity? Like, there are plenty of examples of these like little daydreams unrelated to gender. Like, I imagine myself as the artist performing the songs that I listen to. And while watching YouTube videos, I imagine as if I'm reacting to the video live, talking to myself out loud as if I'm talking to an audience. I often find myself walking around my room, acting out imaginary conversations, usually between two people who disagree with each other. And if I come up with like a fire punchline, I repeat it just to gratify myself, like I'm just mentally masturbating and being narcissistic. And I often feel like I always have a mask on, but that's the only way I know how to act. Like, I've been insincere for so long that mode of behavior has become me. I automatically take on slightly different personalities depending on the context. And I think everyone does this to an extent, but like for me, it makes all of my behaviors feel fake. Like I always feel like I'm not being authentic, but I cannot choose to be authentic because there is no single authentic personality that I have. It's always like a slightly different mode that I enter into involuntarily depending on the situation. Like even in this video, I don't feel like I'm being myself. I don't feel like I'm speaking naturally. Like compared to like other modes of behavior I have right now, I'm speaking with a lot more enunciation in my words. I'm speaking with a lot more energy. And it doesn't feel real, but I can't control it. I just naturally talk like this when I'm in the mindset of making a YouTube video. When I talk to other students at college, I sound different. When I talk to my parents, my accent sounds slightly different. I never feel like any of these modes is the real me. All of it feels fake. I don't know what to do about this. I have a problem with self-centeredness, validation seeking, oversharing, and agenda pushing. So, a mental block that's holding me back is I often feel it's more important to me that other people know about my pain and validate me. More important to do that than to actually solve and move on from my problems. I'd rather get validation than solutions. So, like this video is an example. Talking to a therapist may help with solving my problems, but my problems get heard by only one person. Making a YouTube video is not likely to solve my problems, but my problems get heard by thousands of people. Guess which option is more appealing to me? Guess which one I'm more motivated to do? And I also feel reluctant to solve my problems because if I solve them, that means I can no longer complain about them to get validation and interaction. Another mental blockage I have is that I've grown attached to the idea of being someone whose personality and character are defined by their problems and how they don't fit into the mainstream cookie cutter mold. Like, I'm a black-pilled This is who I am, you know? I feel like I would feel empty if I got my shit together and improved my life, because it's these problems that I feel bring the vibe and soul to the story of my life. I perceive people who have problems such as substance abuse as more interesting and having more soul than people who are well-adjusted and live by, a traditional routine. Like John, who gets up in the morning every day at 7 a.m., goes to work, he just sits in the office, he's an accountant, and then he just drives home and cooks for the kids. And it's like, that just looks fake, shallow, and bland to me. I perceive like someone who's a drug addict. That to me seems like someone who's authentic, someone who has a lot of soul, a lot of vibe, someone who gives off an impression that's opposite to being an NPC, unlike the John who just goes to work. I don't know, like to me there's just something repulsive about the idea of being this generic, well-adjusted, traditional person from the suburbs who just lives life by a script. It's just very repulsive to me. And maybe that's like a coping mechanism that I've developed to feel better about my own situation. Because by every objective metric, generic Susan from the suburbs has a better quality of life than an interesting character who's like had affiliations with the cartel and running drugs and it ended up on the street, human trafficking survivor, domestic abuse, and it sure is interesting, but that is an objectively poor quality of life. And to cope by romanticizing this kind of life is just a cope for people who can't get the stable life. I have a bad habit of oversharing about my insecurities when it's not appropriate to do so or when it would be socially taxing. But I do it anyway. I'm just socializing with other people my age, and I just kind of dropped hints to let people know that I'm a sexually frustrated virgin, which only makes it worse for me socially. Like for some reason, I just can't seem to keep it to myself. For instance, one time I was at a party, and someone was talking about his past relationships, and I reacted something along the lines of, "Oh, Mog's me, you're having sex. You're having sex, bro." Another time, I was hanging out with a group of girls and someone brings up the topic of a threesome. And then I say, what is this bullshit? Is this the life of college girls? Man, I can't relate. That sounds crazy. There was another time when I socially failed at a Halloween party and I got home and I asked my roommate's friend, how do you get laid, bruh? And he replies, I don't. And then I reply, well, looks like we're in the same fucking boat. And then I just angrily walk up the stairs. I mean, I'm always trying to fish for people's pity, trying to fish for some validation. You know, I always want people to know about my problems, even if it embarrasses me socially. Like, why must the world hear about my problems? For some reason, I just can't seem to keep these jealous, bitter, resentful, complaints to myself. I'm also self-centered in this way that I have a desire to change people to think like me when they think differently from me, even when it's not possible to change someone's mind. An example of this that's relevant to the BP/looksmaxing community is that I have a strong desire to have people agree with me on how attractive or unattractive women are. So here's an example. I post a non-white woman, let's say a Latina, who I find very beautiful in a Black Pill Discord server. And the Eurocentric-ass server members say, oh, she doesn't look good because of her phenotype. And then I get angry and argue with them, trying to convince them that their taste in women is skewed and ought to change to be more diverse like mine. Because in my opinion, most black pillars' taste in aesthetics is too Eurocentric. Another example is I post a woman who has the features that I personally find beautiful, but other black pillars say that they don't think they're beautiful. So they called what I thought were just big eyes, bug eyes. And I got angry and argued with them, telling them they have no taste. Another example, I post a plus-size woman that I find aesthetically pleasing, but other black pillars say, oh, she's a 3 out of 10 because she's overweight. And I'm upset by this because I believe they place way too much importance on thinness. I want them to appreciate the beauty that I see, so I proceed to argue about the importance of fat distribution and how she has an ideal fat distribution, making her curvy in an aesthetic way, despite being overweight technically. So as you can see, it's important to me to get people to have the same taste in aesthetics that I do. Like, I kind of want to be that guy who just, like, posts a girl who he finds attractive and goes like, oh yeah, don't you think she's hot? And then the other people in the group also, like, just echo the same thing and they say, oh yeah, she's hot. Yeah, I agree, she's hot. You know, this is not really, like, this is kind of a waste of time. It's just like mental masturbation, but, that's just what I want to do. Besides the topic of looks maxing and facial aesthetics, I tend to inject my opinion into conversations that don't need it. When I was in high school, I was in a group chat with a couple of acquaintances, and sometimes when they were having a casual conversation, I would join the conversation, and I would eventually spin that conversation into social commentary. Now, it's one thing to be opinionated, but it's worse if you're opinionated in a way that is coming from a place of emotion rather than evidence, and that is my issue. I have stances on political and social issues that I'm aware come from a place of envy and insecurity. For instance, I don't want the West to be as sexualized as it is. I think that we should have a more conservative dating culture. I'm against hookup culture, and overall, I would like to see a more traditional, conservative attitude towards sex, dating, and marriage, and for people to not have such a loose attitude towards it like they do in the modern day. And there are definitely arguments that are legit that you can make to support this stance. However, I'm self-aware enough to know that the psychological origin of my stance is my own insecurity because I missed out on having sex. I don't want society to be sexualized because I can't obtain it myself. So I start with that insecurity, I already have this pre-drawn conclusion, and then I look for evidence to back it up. And that's not the order that it should be in. You should start with the evidence and then draw a conclusion, not the other way around. Oversensitivity to and avoidance of my dad, combined with a bad temper. So I got problems at home. I have more mental health issues to deal with when I'm living at home with my parents than when I'm living away from my parents. And note that this section is not to blame him for all the problems. It's not to externalize the blame and remove all the accountability from myself. I'm just describing the situation as it is, purely descriptive. So what's going on is I want him, my father, to talk to me as little as possible to minimize the emotional pain that I feel, because anything that he says to me seems to hurt my feelings, even if it's not really hurtful in and of itself. Like he can say something totally normal and I'm going to be thrown off by it emotionally. I also want him to know as little about me as possible to minimize his leverage. And this is not so much of a problem now as I'm an adult, but when I was in school and when he had a lot more control over what I was and wasn't allowed to do, I felt basically like I needed to do OPSEC, to divulge as little information about me as possible so that he cannot use that information to get more power. I also like to be as physically far from him as possible, and that allows me to feel a sense of freedom. When I was 7, I get home from school. Well, my mom would pick me up from school at that age. I would enjoy the time I had after school before my dad got home from work. And once my dad got home from work, this feeling of dread and anxiety would just like overcome me. Because to me, that feels like the end of my freedom. Because then he'll be able to see what I'm up to. You know, I want to do things like browse parts of the internet that I'm not allowed to go to and not get caught. I wanted the freedom to laze around on the sofa without getting in trouble and to walk around with dog shit posture without my dad correcting me to stand up straight. And as soon as he's in the picture, then I have to follow directions and do what I'm supposed to do, which really sucks. Maybe I have this psychological thing called PDA, which stands for either pathological demand avoidance or persistent drive for autonomy. I did a live stream about the struggles that I have living at home and dealing with my father. It's titled Why I Dread Coming Home for the Holidays. So if you're interested in this topic, you can watch that stream. It's like, in that stream, I talk about things like how if I make a small mistake and I just get corrected by my dad, it's like the worst feeling. You know, and it's like when I make a mistake, I take note of it and I learn from it, but I pray that my dad didn't see it. I pray he didn't notice. I pray that even if he noticed, please don't say something to me. Because the smallest amount of criticism from him just feels so hurtful, and I don't seem to have this problem with anyone other than him. I have this sort of hypervigilance that's like a trauma response, and I'm going to address this later on. I'm not sure if it really is a trauma response, but I have this involuntary hypervigilance of my dad. So I just don't feel safe when I'm alone with him. Someone else also being present makes me feel more comfortable. So, for instance, I want to move my chair to sit a little bit further away from him at the dinner table. And it's like all these like little sounds, these indicators, I really pick them up. I easily notice them. Like I can hear his chair squeak, so I know that he's downstairs and maybe he got up and he might be going upstairs. It's like I want to avoid being seen or crossing paths with him because he might talk to me and I want to avoid that. So I can like hear the sound of his feet as he walks in the house. I can sense when he is upstairs because I can hear like the low pitch thud coming from coming through the floor. I even hear like little things like when he opens his mouth and breathes in, I anticipate him to start talking. It's like I brace myself because there's a chance that I'm about to be spoken to. Avoiding being spoken to, especially in a critical way, is so important to my brain. So this has happened several times. I oversleep and I just wake up too late. And I'm afraid that if I go downstairs when he is in the room that is right by the stairs, then he's going to make a critical comment about my bad sleep schedule. So I decide to stay in my room until he leaves that room so that I can go downstairs without greeting him so that I don't get spoken to. Or I wait until my brother gets home from school because that makes me feel safer, so I feel confident enough to go downstairs. And sometimes even this is a cope because I'm too lazy to leave my room anyway if I'm feeling depressed as fuck. So, like, I only went downstairs when it was time for dinner for, like, a few of the last several days. Lately, I've been living in an anxiety and relief cycle at home. I'd feel anxious when I'm around my dad, and when I get the chance to go to my room and close the door and not be around my dad, relief, finally. I hate living at home. I feel so trapped living at home. I've been wanting to work and make my own money and move out since I was a teen. But as the years passed, I never did. And that's because I was, 1, too lazy to get a job, and 2, too behaviorally unprepared to perform in a job. My dad told me that I wouldn't last a week working at McDonald's, and he's right. Okay, so I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. A lot of you guys might be wondering right now, well, damn, Turbo, you're traumatized. What did your dad do to hurt you? Well, the situation isn't so easy to explain because it's not like these clear-cut cases of trauma, like a parent sexually abused as a child. Well, there you go. That's a definitive one person to blame and an obvious explanation for why the victim ended up the way they are. That is nothing like what happened to me. Because I'm not saying that there aren't areas in which my dad could have done better as a parent. I'm just saying that he didn't do anything that's clearly wrong in a general sense. It is me who is abnormal or atypical enough to get hurt by behaviors that do not hurt the average person. He's a normal parent. I'm just an abnormal child. I'm Chinese. My family's Chinese. And as for the Asian tiger parent stereotype, he is not like that. He's actually much more lenient and easygoing than the stereotypical tiger parent. Like, he's not even close to being a tiger parent. Well, he is more authoritarian than the typical Western parent. And of course, that's to be expected considering the culture he grew up in. I'd say he's about halfway between authoritarian and the authoritative archetype that in the West is usually said to be the ideal type. In my opinion, I think that some kids are born naturally mentally tougher than others. Some kids are born naturally weaker than others. So some kids can handle very authoritarian parents, whereas other kids at the opposite side of the bell curve, they might break down crying at the smallest of demands. And I just think that I happen to be at the bottom 5% tail end of the bell curve in resilience or emotional toughness. Now, here's an area in which my dad does fall short. It's that he is not very accommodating. Because if I was a parent, if it becomes apparent that I have a particularly sensitive child, I'm going to soften up my approach in order to accommodate the mental toughness cards that my child has been dealt. But my dad doesn't really believe in that. He seems to believe that anyone, no matter how you were born, can be trained through tough love, and that that's the best approach. So it didn't matter how many times I brought up to him that his approach, his hard line, unwavering principles, and the sharp bluntness in his speech. I told him that it's too much for me to handle emotionally, but he didn't change. But hey, that might be too much to ask. Like, I can't blame him for not having the parenting philosophy of an American millennial. He did the best that he could with the information that he had. And sure, I'm saying this now, and I think I'm coming across as quite reasonable and understanding of where my dad's coming from. But man, when I'm actually talking to him, bro, like, my emotions really get the best of me. This is my weakness. When I'm feeling strong emotions, it's so hard for me to stay grounded, keep my composure, and stay logical. It's like my entire perception gets distorted by my mood. Recently, my dad and I had a conversation that unfortunately turned heated, which was mostly my fault. But I just felt so offended that I felt like I was being emotionally abused. And during the conversation, I would think back to all the previous times that my dad and I talked, and I would like perceive myself as a literal abuse victim. What's the opposite of rose-tinted glasses? I saw all of my memories with him through the opposite of rose-tinted glasses, pretty much. But looking back on it now, when I'm in a neutral headspace, not clouded by emotion, the way that he's treated me really isn't that bad. During the conversation, when I was upset with him, I got super intense and I said things like, all these years, you haven't shown an ounce of respect for my boundaries, so I don't believe I'm obligated to respect yours. You don't seem to be bothered by the fact that I've been living in fear for the last 20 years because of you. Also in this conversation, my dad said something along the lines of, I don't believe in the trans stuff. Man can't be a woman, woman can't be a man is a man, woman is a woman. I don't believe in none of this trans shit. This whole fad is something that's made up by some bad people, and don't believe that there are any successful trans people. You're being fooled if you believe that. And I reacted like, well, you know what I don't believe in? Wasting my breath trying to get through to ignorant people like you. Yo, that's not how to win friends and influence people. Fighting fire with fire just burns the bridge twice as fast. And in this case, he brought a match and I brought a flamethrower. You know the subreddit, Am I the Asshole? AITA? Well, the reality is, yup, I'm the asshole. Because I'm too aggression maxed. I just say things I don't mean, and I act like a fucking movie character, hoping I can make my dad feel small and powerless just for a moment, as he always has done to me, unintentionally. But that's not how you change someone's mind. That just turns relations sour.
The apple too should embarrass you. It embarrasses me if you had any
It doesn't
pride
embarrass
at all.
the shareholders,
I don't give a
Steve.
shit about the shareholders. That's why I hired you, so I don't ever have to hear about
The shareholders are my problem, and the board represents the shareholders. That's how it works.
You sure it wasn't Lee Clow who dragged his feet selling the 60?
At my direction, Steve. You think he would have done that on his own, taken it on himself?
Yeah, I think he would have done what it took to save it from you.
I was the only thing protecting it.
You didn't want the ad because you were trying to kill the Mac 2 months before it launched.
I'm fucking delusional.
Can I mention something to you?
Sure.
I have no earthly idea why you're here.
Stroking my ego thinking I sound cool, and I don't sound cool. I don't sound clever. I just sound like an asshole. It's not helping at all. And I just gotta be realistic. Look, he's pretty set in his ways, and I just have to work with him. Again, I can't expect him to have the mindset of a young, Western, progressive parent who's all pro-LGBT and all about accommodating mental health. He's not gonna change. It's about time I give up on trying to bend this steel beam with my bare hands. It's fucking stupid to want to change someone who clearly won't. But that's literally all I want to fucking do. I feel like changing him would be the thing that makes me the happiest in life. Well, that's something that therapy can help resolve, but that's far from the biggest issue. You know what's even worse? The most concerning part is that I get these like split-second intrusive thoughts when I'm mad to physically attack the person that I'm angry at. Like for a split second when I was talking to my dad, I just felt the urge to like punch him in the face because I was just so fed up with his ways. And I didn't act on it, and I'm very glad that I was lucky enough to have the self-control to refuse to act on the impulsive, violent thoughts. But man, come on. A few minutes ago, I was sitting here saying that I don't feel safe around my dad. Well, because of shit like this, neither should anyone else feel safe around me. That thought is disturbing, because I love my parents and should never wish harm upon them. The thought shouldn't even cross my mind. But oh man, like if I was just 5% more pissed off in that moment, I might have not been able to hold back. And I'm concerned that I might accidentally have a lapse in self-control out in the real world. You know, I get pissed off and I lose my cool and I end up losing my job, or even worse, getting someone hurt or ending up in prison. Or I mess with the wrong guy and I end up dead. If I don't learn how to manage my anger, that'll be a very dangerous thing for myself and the people around me. Knowing how to deal with all kinds of people, easygoing people, difficult people, nice people, mean people, smart people, dumb people, is a life skill that I lack. There are plenty of people in the world, far meaner than he is, way harder to get along with than him. And if I can't handle him, then I can't handle working for a demanding boss. I can't handle negotiating with someone who has a strong personality. Alright, so that's all I gotta say about my anger issues, but you know how I talked about how I'm hyper-vigilant when it comes to my dad? I'm always unprepared when it comes to my mom. Like, this just makes no sense. Like, my brain doesn't expect my mom to talk to me. Like, I just don't expect my mom to come home from work. Like, my brain is always surprised when she suddenly shows up and interacts with me, even though she does it often, and I find it super annoying. Like, how the fuck am I thrown off by an quote-unquote unexpected change if it happens every day? How can I not expect it? Like, I'm always in the mind frame of needing to be prepared in case my dad talks to me at any time. But he talks to me less often than my mom does. It just makes no fucking sense. Everything that I've said in this video so far is something, well, except for the black pill stuff. I'm probably not going to say the black pill stuff to a therapist. But aside from that, everything I said in this video, I will say to a therapist. But I have one major hang-up about going to therapy, and this is the final section of the video. You see, the common therapy advice, such as increasing your self-esteem, not caring about what others think, and raising your confidence, well, I just disagree with this kind of messaging.
Psychologists have focused on the differences between Western and non-Western countries. Perhaps the most well-established difference is that Westerners tend to be more individualistic. This means they emphasize the rights of the individual and value things like independence and freedom of choice. On the other hand, non-Westerners are more collectivist. This means they emphasize the goals of the group and value things like interdependence and cooperation. Now, these differences actually give us an opportunity to evaluate our society from an outsider perspective. For example, in the West, a lot of our cultural messages are clearly individualistic. How many times have you heard phrases like "be yourself" or "don't worry about what others think of you"? But from a collectivist mindset, this can seem sort of selfish. In many cases, following such advice would mean ignoring the consequences of your actions on others. Instead, collectivist cultures would be more likely to sacrifice the needs of the individual in order to satisfy the needs of the group. But then again, from an individualistic perspective, this could easily be seen as demeaning. Hence, cultures influence how much importance we place on the individual.
I definitely lean more towards the collectivist side of things. And I think that most people in the West already have more than enough confidence.
Wake up every morning and you know that kids are getting a really crappy education right now.
So you think that most of the kids here are getting a crappy education right now?
Oh, I don't think they are. I know they are.
Either the kids are getting stupider every year, or something is wrong in the education system.
I just try to do my best in school and make my grandmother proud.
Among 30 developed countries, we rank 25th in math and 21st in science. In almost every category, we've fallen behind, except one. Kids from the USA rank number 1 in confidence.
This movie came out 15 years ago, and the hyper-individualistic, inflated self-esteem issue in Western culture has only grown since then. Like, I think young people in the West already have a surplus of self-esteem, especially young women. Just look at TikTok. It seems like these days every woman thinks that she's a 10 out of 10 because of this Western cultural messaging that states you're supposed to be confident regardless of the reality of your abilities. You should always be positive and never think anything about yourself that's unpleasant. This kind of messaging is promoted as a feature of good mental health. But I'm not too sure that I agree with that. These days, we put more emphasis on having one's self-perception be positive than accurate. And hey, just seeing all the degeneracy in the world today, I think people being more self-critical is exactly what we need. And because of this, I worry that if I go to therapy and I'm open about my beliefs, the therapist will find me a very difficult and unlikable patient because I keep disagreeing with them. On the other hand, if I go to therapy and hide these beliefs and pretend to agree with everything the therapist says, well then, of course, the therapy won't be effective. But with all that said, no two therapists are the same. Therapists are all different, so not every therapist agrees with this popular advice that I talked about. But I predict that if I go to therapy, chances are this is what I will hear. What do you recommend I do? If you got the time to write a comment, please do so. Let's get this comment section started. Thank you so much for watching this video. And last but not least, special thanks to the channel No Copyright Gameplay for the gameplay footage. This has been Turbo Black Pill, and I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.